all need to be in communication so that everybody knows where everybody is in relationship to John at all times. Thank you for asking. I really appreciate it. Like, I spent the last couple of days sort of burning off the helpless rage I felt and pain I felt. Every time Delroy Lindo's face entered my brain and Michael B. Jordan's face entered my brain, I was just, is unimaginable. It's like, I'm like, where are we in 1962? So I do want to have constructive conversation about this, and so I appreciate the question. I will not be addressing any other comments that wanted to call me an ableist or tell me how I should feel about this. I'll just be deleting your comments after this. So if that's what you'd like to say, move on. My praxis, kindness, clarity, compassion. I think the first thing that should have happened is there should have been clarity for everybody concerned about the exact plans that are in place. For John himself, he should know exactly what the plans are and what precautions are being taken, and so that he can feel as comfortable as possible. And he should know, what contingencies are in place if things go wrong. And the same for any marginalized groups that he is likely to take slurs at. They should know specifically what slurs they might expect. They should also know what kind of groundwork Bafta has laid down to deal with minimizing their exposure to these slurs. Also, they should be asked, how do you feel about it? If he happens to shout the N-word at you, are you feeling like that's something you'd be okay with? Understanding the context, because we have a whole range of arrangements that we have in place to prevent the likelihood of that happening. Again, another thing about clarity to the audience. The audience needs to know specifically that there are slurs involved, that John may shout slurs at different times. It's not enough to say that the language will be strong or that he'll be making noises or whatever. You need to know the worst of it so that everybody's prepared. So that's the clarity part. Kindness would be to have a team assembled that is with each marginalized group. I say 2 at least, with John, 2 at least with the group from Sinners. The likelihood is that the Americans are going to want to hang together anyway, and the Black Americans especially since so many of them were there for Sinners. So if the group is larger and likely to split up, then you want to have them covered as well. So I would say for that group, probably anywhere from 6 to 8 people possibly account for. And for whichever other marginalized group that might be in danger of getting a slur, they would need, however many people to cover them as well. The goal is to minimize the possibility of John crossing paths with one of the groups that usually triggers him. The teams would be in communication with each other, and each team member would be letting the other team members know where their principles are at all times. And that just is, a way of keeping people from ending up in the situation in the first place. I also think it's important to remember this is a party. They're kind of like emotional security, but to also have someone there who's a good host, who can keep things upbeat and lively, have charisma, and be charming and interesting and that sort of thing. And I should have mentioned that these arrangements should be made before they're even in the country for the awards. So once they're there and on the ground, there needs to be another check-in to make sure that everybody is still on board and okay with the plans. So these teams are super important, and they should remain with the marginalized folks throughout the event. The people who are with John need to kind of check in with him, and so that be present so that he feels comfortable to tell them if he feels like there are ticks building. If he feels like he's in the safe zone, then everybody stays where they are. But also let the other teams know that John is still remaining in the building, and to ask him that question before people of color or whichever marginalized group he's likely to hurl a slur at. Let them know that John is here. He thinks he's fine, so they can be prepared in case there's an upsee. If John feels like there is something building and he's going to tick, there needs to be a separate space that is already established for him, a lounge where he can relax, where he can watch the show on the screens, which is, I think, what they ended up doing anyway. And the team should stay with him. His 2 people should stay with him and let him know that it's okay. that this is why we plan, so that things can go well. The events leading up to and after the ceremony, the two teams need to, the two or three teams, however many teams there are, they all need to be in communication so that everybody knows where everybody is in relationship to Dawn at all times. And to make sure that their paths do not cross. Now, what happens if their paths cross? I am going to come back with a video on like what to do if things go wrong.